All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, July 19th. So you can basically call turnaround Tuesday, I guess. Very nice price action and really a nice pickup after what we saw towards the end of the day yesterday, or I should say the afternoon yesterday. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. You could read the whole risk disclaimer here. So what do we have for today? SPY up 2.7%, Qs up 3%, small caps up also just huge performance by the small caps. I'll recap that chart, but up 3.5%. That was really interesting to watch, was what the small caps were doing today. But very, very nice price action. Just going back, because I usually start in these videos, I talk about what the big thing or what the big event was yesterday that drove markets. Apple seemed to be the catalyst towards the end of the day yesterday. My thought, which I said in yesterday's video, but I also said that my opinions don't matter so much. It's really what the price action does, right? So my opinion, sorry, was that the Apple news wasn't that big of a deal. Saying there's many different things that can cause a stock to move, but coming out and saying that they're going to slow down hiring, to me, I mean, we've been hearing that from a lot of companies at this point, and there's a lot that's been priced into the market already. So it would have been different, and I'm not saying that we're not going to hear this, but if Apple came out and said that they're lowering guidance or something to that effect, then I would think that you would see a pretty big price reaction. But just saying that that a couple areas or some areas within the company are going to have to slow down hiring and maybe stop hiring. I mean, that shouldn't, I don't think that should have done what it did to the market yesterday. But like I said, I mean, you have to honor the price action. We have seen a couple times where price action has got up into a resistance level and failed. So I did what I had to do yesterday and took off a couple trades that I started, and then of course all of those trades actually would have worked quite nicely today. So let me recap it, but I like to start with what happened yesterday, because that was something big, and in terms of the reversal that we saw yesterday. So today you get the turnaround Tuesday, and really nice market breadth. You could see on the bottom left of your screen, that's the indicator that I use, which looks at up versus down volume. So not only advancing versus declining names, but associating volume with it. I find that I get very good results when we've got pretty good breadth. And that was another thing too. Like at the end of the day, the yesterday, and sorry, and then I'll move from this example, but the breadth really never went negative yesterday. Like there was still more advancing names on the NASDAQ side than there was. Today, you have a really lopsided move in terms of names that advance. You had 22 versus 2 for the Dow, for the S&P 494 versus 9 declining, and the NASDAQ 2378 versus 439 declining. So that's very good looking breadth. Let's talk about the indices for a minute. So the S&P does get back above the 50-day moving average, right? You're going to hear about the 50-day moving average all over financial media and FinTwit, but yes, it's an important thing. It goes into the process of how traders build their risk, right? Above the 50-day moving average means something, all right? And the last time that we were above was basically back in April, right? So a good number of months. Remember, another thing that I said was, if we did, when we started breaking down, I said that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because you would get the moving averages to be an easier hurdle to get back above. And I have on my screen the 50. I've got the 20-day moving average, the 20 exponential moving average, and I also have the 5 on mine too. Again, I call them shorter term moving averages, but we're back above. We still will have to get above the value area for the month. we're going to be coming upon that, and we're now at the highest level that we've been at in July. Here's what the Qs, I'll bring up the Qs here. I know people like to look at the Qs rather than NASDAQ futures sometimes. So I'll bring that up today. I flip flop in these videos. You know, they're the same thing. They track the same basket of stock, but just so that you have a level, 367, right? And that's also nicely above the 50-day moving average, right? So yesterday got rejected there. And as well as what I was referring to yesterday was in both the S&P and the NASDAQ was that we got rejected at this previous high. So we're now through that. I mean, that's really nice to see. And the weekly chart too, you know, we're going to have a big level in the Qs to watch. That's 297.74. And that's by the end of the week. So this is obviously a developing bar. So we've got 3 more days for that. IWM, just to review this gets you back above the 200 period moving average, you know, deeper move down here from where we were. And that's above the 50, but still inside value. All right. So still some work to do, you know, in terms of value areas, because I do use volume at price quite a bit. Let me talk about a couple different sectors, and then we'll go through some single name stocks. But the semiconductors, you know, we'll see if this was a false breakdown. I think it's still a little bit early, even though this is, you know, it's the first candle here again above the 50-day moving average. When we go over to the weekly chart, right, this is where, you know, we get those really significant levels, just like I was looking at the Qs, 224.36, right? So for confirmation purposes, I want to see price get back into the value area for the year. You know, another possibility is if we don't go back inside the value, or we could get rejected here, right, and begin to kind of go back that way. So 224.36 will be important to important level to watch, but really nice, you know, to see the semiconductors follow through. You know, as I had mentioned yesterday to the room, to Tribeca Trade Group, was that we saw a lot of call buying in the sense. We saw a lot of positioning in SMH, and we also saw it in SOXL, which is the leveraged ETF. So that works very well. You know, names like Marvell, ON Semiconductor, they were up 7% for the day. They were your leaders, but you could see everything was up. The worst performing name in the semiconductors ETF was Taiwan Semi, and that was still up 3% for the day. And NVIDIA in there as well, up 5.6%. Let's just take a quick look at the NVIDIA chart. I haven't been trading this one. But yeah, I mean, that's also, you got a lot of first days over the, you know, first day into the, or over the 50-day moving average. So you got that there as well. All right. And by the way, you know, another thing that you could kind of use the 50-day for is to use a stop price and say, okay, I like the price. I like what's going on. A lot of things over the 50-day moving average. Set your stop price to just below the 50-day moving average, as we've talked about all year long, and you know, obviously before this year. But you have to, you know, in my opinion, and you know, any market, but especially this market, you have to have a stop price, right? You got to know where your trade's going to work, where it's not going to work, and establishing that on the onset of the trade is extremely important. All right, so we talked about that. A couple other plays that I talked about from yesterday, the Deckers, right? So nice to see retail get going a little bit. You know, this was a name that I thought could possibly break higher here. It did. It was up 5% for the day. I think it could ultimately get to 300. Floor and Decor was another name, a little bit of a slower mover, only up 2%. But again, I like the chart pattern that's going on here. Just to look at a couple other, you know, names that are involved in semis, but Cadence is more of a software type name. Back above the 200-day moving average. I looked at this a week ago and it failed. Right, we had a lot of failures like that, you know, but a little bit of a, you know, a higher low here. So this is a name that I'm watching. It does have earnings coming up, right? And that's actually, is that this week? No, that's next week, right? And then another one that I like too is Synopsys, which already had earnings, right? But same thing, got to the 200-day moving average, failed. Very similar looking charts. Synopsys and Cadence. I think I like it's a little bit easier without the earnings in the way. So Synopsys might be one that I look at. Just a few other names that I thought were interesting and probably off your radar, but BAH, Booz Allen. Wait for that chart to come up. I noticed this name when it got to new highs about a week ago. So nice little check back here for Booz Allen and a move higher. ENPH was another one of those names, very similar to Cadence and to Synopsys, where it got above the value area, failed, came back and held this 200 period moving average, and it's right back to where it was in a week. Very tricky, right? And that's how this market has been. Now we'll see if this attempt can make it through. Another one that may not be on your radar, which I thought was interesting, is GPC. Genuine Parts had a nice day. That also gets you out to new. I think that's a new closing high, not a new ultimate high, but new high there. UNH, right? This is a name that we talked about last week from earnings. Had kind of a ugly day with a lot of stocks yesterday. Gets over the earnings date. All right, and then a couple other things that I thought were interesting too. It seemed like this was like kind of a big tech day. All the bigger tech or they call Meta now a communication company, but that's an XLC, not an XLK. But even like this was interesting, I thought, for a trade. We went over this setup in the room because you're out of this channel, right? And sometimes you can see these things a little bit more clearly on the 1 hour chart. Right. So once you kind of got back above this VPOC, notice over here, right? It's basically like a channel, right? So you're out and above that, and 178.56 could be the next level of resistance. If price can get above that, then it's 184. Again, this is just short-term swings. When I talk about names and downtrends, what I'm generally talking about is either day trades or short-term swings, or it's got to have a little bit better setup. Like it's got to be above the short-term moving averages, and it's got to be above the value area for the month. All right. So another one too that I didn't do anything with yesterday, LNTH, right back to where it was, and did not take out where the price opened yesterday, but still pretty strong. Google was another one too that we talked about as day trade potential. Right, this actually went all the way through its value area and above. Let's talk about Netflix just for a quick second. Notice where this thing got to. Right to this upper VPOC, so it's trading at 215. If you zoom out, right, so this is a good example. You'll see this time and time again during earnings season. Price will literally seek out where a high volume area was that we haven't revisited, right? So VPOC, Virgin Point of Control, right up there, and I actually planned a trade based on that. All right, so if you go to our earnings channel, all right, here is my setup for Netflix. Right, so the reason why this was a very small trade for me, but I just wanted to participate in an earnings trade. The implied move was 14%. In hindsight 2020, selling premium would have worked really well because the options were expensive. But this company is a name. Netflix is a company that has horrible earnings history, right? It's gone down 9 of the last 10 quarters, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, so before you even get to this one, so really horrible earnings, and that's why I didn't want to take a big shot at this. But if you look at the numbers that they put out, they were not good, right? So what does that tell you when a company? See if I can find the earnings numbers. So what does it tell you when a company, goes up, 15, 16 bucks, which I think is about 5% for the company, when they go up after this type of earnings, because they did not have good numbers. You know, the streaming numbers, you know, so the guy, what the analysts were looking for was pretty bad, right? So it tells you that the bad news was priced in. Now they may still say something on their webcast that they give. I think they give that on YouTube, but so that could change where the stock is now. You know, and if you're long the stock, you could always take profits here. You don't have to wait till the next day. Same thing if you're long an option contract, right? It's a little bit harder with the spread, which is what I put on. But if you're long an option contract, you don't have to wait till tomorrow, right? You should be thinking about how you hedge that in the after hours, right? Delta hedging. And you could Google that. Make sure that I always tell traders, if you do not know how to delta hedge an option, right, you shouldn't be trading options because things like this happen in the after hours, and you certainly don't want to wait till tomorrow to lock in your profits. So in any event, make sure that it's very, you know, all you need is Google. By the way, a lot of times I get asked questions on Twitter about this or that. All you need is Google. Just Google what you're looking for. Sorry to be blunt, but you could Google delta hedging and kind of get a pretty good understanding. You don't even need to buy a book. So yeah, so this was interesting, and you know, we kind of look at this like, even if you didn't have a trade on for Netflix, you know, or you had a really small trade on like me, risking $250. That's all I wanted to risk because of the earnings history. But it's a proxy for like, okay, how much bad news is priced into this market, right? The Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, or BOFA as they call themselves now, the fund manager survey, which you probably heard a lot about that today if you were on FinTwit today. But you know, the expectations are so low right now for this market, right? Now the other thing, you know, that's a good thing, right? That sentiment has completely been washed out. We've talked about the positioning is extremely low. But on the flip side, there's also not much fear in this market, right? The VIX is back down, right? And the equity put call ratio is not high either, right? Indicating fear. So low positioning, low sentiment, but also low fear too. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. All right. So that's it for today's video. I think that's enough. You know, again, we're going to get a lot more earnings reports that are going to shake things up. So we'll see if, you know, we can continue to see some of these things rally from, you know, from the levels that we're at, which I think is important. A couple other names I mentioned, UNH, right? Also the managed care space, which kind of took a day off yesterday. Very strong today, right? CNC was another one that made it out to 52-week highs. All right. So I like to see, by the way, you know, different groups, especially some of the lower volatility areas where you don't have to be all in growth, right? You could have something like a Centene on or UNH, right, which can kind of balance out your portfolio. I like that kind of diversification, as long as the company is showing leadership, like some of these managed care companies are, right? I don't just put a company on because it's in a different industry for diversification. It's got to be a good looking, you know, it's got to be a good looking chart and a leader at that too. So anyway, I'll leave it there for the night. Guys, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.